Welcome, everybody, to Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick, igniting leadership excellence. We are in season 2, and this is episode number 36. Develop others, but triage first. I'm Rick, and this is my co host, Emily.
Hi.
This is where we talk about everything related to leadership, and you do not have to be a firefighter to tune in and to listen because you can learn something. Hey, you might even be able to learn something from us knuckle dragon hose jockeys and apply it into, your 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 career. And Emily and I do approach leadership from a biblical world view. So, Emily, where are we going here today?
Yeah, so in episode 34, we talked about the importance of investing in people. And in episode 35, we discussed that leaders have a responsibility to develop others.
Mhm.
So, continuing with that theme, today's episode is on developing others, but triage first.
Mhm.
So, let's jump right on in. What does the word triage mean?
Yeah, triage. Triage is typically applied in a emergency medical situation. And triage is a French word and it means to sort. Just like in a mass casualty incident, we had to triage who gets the most attention. Are they a red, immediate life threat? Are they a yellow? It's serious, but they can wait. Or are
Mhm.
they green, walking wounded? Or are they dead? That's what triage is. And now triage is even practice in hospital emergency rooms. When you walk through the back door, you're going to be triaged. If you're complaining about a pain in your pinky, well, and it's Friday night in your ER, well, you're probably not going to get out of there until 9 o'clock the next morning because there's a lot of other people coming in
Yeah.
who are a lot more critical than your pain and your pinky. And you say, "Oh, Rick, that doesn't happen." Yes, it does. People call 911 2:30 in the morning because they have abdominal pains, and we'd get there. Questions like, how long has this been taking place? Well, it started yesterday morning at 8 o'clock. You know, why didn't you call us at 8 o'clock yesterday morning? So that's what triage is. It is setting a priority. And we could take that and apply it in what we are talking about here. Setting priorities, because we're going to talk a little bit about time management today and allocating resources.
Yeah. So, can you give us a real world example of how triage works and how does it relate to developing people?
Yeah. Well, I just did mention about, slightly how it works in the emergency room. And it was not uncommon for us to be dispatched to an MVA, motor vehicle accident, with 3 or more patients, in particular out on the US highway here or on the interstate. And people just pile up their vehicles, especially in the wintertime. And it doesn't matter if it's the first snow that showed up in October or if it's in February where we've had a stretch of warm weather and people are driving like idiots and they pile up their vehicles. And there's a number of patients out there. Well, are they the walking wounded? Uh, is it somebody who thinks they're hurt but they're not? Is it somebody pinned in a car that has a broken femur, which, yeah, that's critical. Or is it someone who is experiencing a head injury? We are prioritizing the most critical patient first. The person who has a broken finger, yeah, it hurts them.
Yeah.
Or even if they have a broken wrist, that hurts. But the person who's pinned in the car and they're unconscious, they're bleeding from the head, they've got cerebral spinal fluid coming out the ear, and they've got a broken femur, their priority. That's a patient that's categorized as a red, and they have priority. And then the person with the broken wrist, they'll get addressed eventually.
Mhm.
So that's critical. So how in the world does that apply to leadership development? we have to triage. The more people that we have working for us and reporting to us, we have to triage that. Now, under the incident command system and the concept of division of labor, and we could add, I don't want to add in unity of command because that would be, something completely different. But when we talk about division of labor and span of control, well, what is span of control? That's how many people one supervisor can effectively handle at any one time. Seven being the max, 3 to 5 being the optimal. Now that's being applied in an emergency scene, but certainly also in a non-emergency scene in a work setting. For example, Rebecca worked at a eye doctor's place, very large one here in northern Colorado. Her supervisor had 27 people reporting to her. That doesn't work, and it didn't work. Rebecca was continually telling us about the failures in leadership that were occurring in that organization. One person cannot effectively supervise 27 people. One person cannot effectively develop 27 people, even if they are applying the concept of triage.
Yeah.
It's entirely too many. We, as the battalion chiefs here, were stretched when I had 7 lieutenants and 2 captains reporting to me. And that was pushing us right there, to the limit. But it was necessary to take a look at each one of them and say, okay, where's the priority lie here? There's sometimes it could get everybody at one time, but then there's others who I wanted to develop and prepare for a higher position. We talked about that in the last episode. And so I had to triage, that and prioritize it. Then coming back to the medical aspect, the person who's yelling the loudest is not always the one who is the most hurt.
Mhm.
Usually they aren't. It's the ones who were quiet.
Mhm.
How do you apply that to the workspace? Well, the one who is the loudest isn't always the one who really needs the development the most. That old analogy of the squeaky wheel gets the oil. You know what? We just might need to replace the squeaky wheel.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you oil it and the squeak comes back. How long are you going to quit? Let me try that one again. How long are you going to keep oiling that squeaky wheel before you move on and you do something else? The loudest one getting the attention, and you have people working for you that need attention and they just aren't getting it. And I learned that lesson when I was first promoted to battalion chief, when the individual wasn't necessarily a what you could refer to as a squeaky wheel, but he definitely was a high maintenance individual and a problem child. And I put a lot of time into that guy, thinking that, with my superior leadership ability, I would be able to, develop this guy. Well, it never happened.
Mhm.
And fortunately, I had a captain on the shift that said, Rick, this guy's sucking the life out of you,
Mhm.
and he's sucking the life out of the shift. There's other people here who need you.
Yeah.
And so, that kind of jumped ahead a little bit, Emily, but I'll turn that back over to you.
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue into our next point. Let's discuss what the challenges of time allocation is.
Yeah, and we hit on this one a little bit in episode number 34, and I'm going to repeat it. And this is one that I am going to repeat often to chief officers in the fire
Mhm.
department. And that is when I hear them say, I just don't have time to spend with my troops. If you listen to this podcast, you know my stance on that. You know that when I was a battalion chief, I was in the stations with the troops. And I don't buy off on that nonsense that chiefs don't have the time. And it was affirmed when I heard Chief Lieb, who retired from FDNY, on a podcast when he was talking about the importance of chief officers being in the station to get to know people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, time is a challenge, especially, and for people who are in emergency services, you're going to have the interruptions because there's emergency. Somebody's called 911. That's the priority. That's what the priority is. Somebody needs our help and it needs to be addressed right now. But there's other things that you could put off till later on that, yeah, they need to be done. But like I said, and this last one is people in human resources and uppers like to talk about, our people are our most valuable asset, then treat them like that. But
Hmm.
watch out for the blood sucking vampires. And that's what was happening in that situation that I was just telling you about,
Yeah.
Emily, is that guy was a vampire and he was sucking the life out of me. He was sucking the life out of the shift. And there, frankly, some people aren't going to change. Now, I do believe, and I know you believe it too, that when somebody puts their trust and their faith in Jesus Christ as their Savior, a life change takes place.
Yeah.
Life can change.
Hmm.
People can change, but it can be a very, very difficult process. Now, the individual that I'm referring to, he had no intent whatsoever in changing. Life was all about him
Yeah.
and what he could get from other people and how he could manipulate other people. That's a challenge.
Ultimately, a character fail.
That's absolutely what it is. Ultimately a character fail. I would have officers ask me from time to time, say, "Hey, Chief, how much time do I devote to this guy?"
Mm.
And I said, there's no black and white answer to that. And what is the issue?
Yeah.
I would always break it down into two things. Number one, is it a technical skill that they struggle with, which is a whole lot easier to handle and correct? Or is it a character-based issue? Because if it's a character-based issue, it's going to take longer. And generally, those character-based issues turn into a progressive disciplinary process. Which, folks, if you're in a supervisory position and you've got to go down that path of progressive disciplinary, make sure you keep notes, make sure you adequately document things so that it is there. And then if it gets down to the point that you got to write people up, that is in there. Or if it comes down to the point where they frankly have to be terminated, you've got that. That's hard, that's tough, but those are things that
Yeah.
need to take place because they're dragging down the organization. And when we, as the leaders, are spending so much time with the bloodsuckers, there's others that aren't getting our attention. So when do you determine that you're spending too much time with somebody? Don't make that determination in a vacuum. Hopefully, you're in an organization where you're going to get support and some help to determine. It's like, okay, all right, and you can start to see it in other people. If it's a smaller crew or if you're a battalion chief or, supervising a lot more people, watch the people. You know, watch the people. And because they're going to want to know why is this person over here always getting the attention?
Hmm.
Yeah, how come I'm not being recognized for what I'm doing? Or I would like to get some additional training, but I can never get my supervisor's attention because she's always over there dealing with the troublemaker.
Hmm.
We have to be careful with that. And then also, recognize, pay attention to when people need the help, but they're not saying it. Hey, especially I'll tell you, especially in the firefighting world, you know, it's very, very difficult for firefighters to ask for help. Cops
Hmm.
too. Why? Because we're helping everybody else. So
Yeah.
it's very difficult to say, hey, I need help in this particular area. So I applaud the ones who are humble enough to say, I'm struggling with this. Excuse me. I'm struggling with this and I need help.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what are some practical tips that we can share with our listeners for assessing who and what needs immediate attention versus what can be deferred?
I'll refer, first of all, to two resources. and I've not mentioned this in a long time, but my business says Fire Officer Leadership Academy, but I'm also a member of the John Maxwell Certified Leadership Team. I have access to incredible resources to help individuals, to help organizations. But I want to talk about two books here. I'll show it for those who are watching this on the video. The first one by Maxwell is the 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. And the next one is Developing the Leader Within You 2.0. Now, yeah, you could go out and I recommend buying those books. But shameless plug here, I can help you go deeper with
Mm,
this because of the access to the additional materials that I have. And not only
yeah.
that, but the years that I've spent, in a career in the military, in the fire service, in my background training, education, so forth and like that. I can help you dig deeper and develop. So that's one tip right there. There are really good resources that are available. I like Maxwell's writing. When you sit down, at least when I sit down and I read one of John Maxwell's books, it's like, wow, this guy's got a lot of common sense. He's got the ability to be able to put it into a cover of a book. And so, that's one step right there because you could pick up on things out of these books that will help you to be able to look at the people that are working for you and assess who needs help from the harder ones.
No.
Not the ones where you look and they say, wow, they are really struggling with this particular skill right here. And there's I would see guys struggle writing reports. And it would start with the fact that they don't know how to type. And it's like this. And the more complex incident, like if it was a more complex medical call, if I had a lieutenant or a
So like
captain,
typing with one
yeah,
finger.
yeah, didn't know how to type, and they were the incident commander, like this. That's a struggle. Well, short of sending somebody to a typing class, which most firefighters are not going to go to,
Hmm.
you know, that's a challenge.
Hmm.
But where I saw other challenges related to report writing was that last word, or the second to last word, writing. People
Hmm.
struggling with writing. What I would do, and I know initially, I know the people on my shift thought I was nuts, but I had a method to this. And so what I would do is I would send out a writing assignment to the shift.
Hmm.
Short one, 750 words.
Short.
That is short. It's like some guys want to stroke out. you know.
I probably would with
And,
750
and
words.
and initially I thought I'm not going to tell them why I'm doing this. And after the first two, it's like, okay, seeing how to do it. So, okay, after two of them, I asked the question to people, do you have any idea why I am doing this?
Hmm.
And only a couple of them said, you want us to write better reports. Yep. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
You need to learn how to write because if you are the person that's got the primary patient contact, you're going to write the medical report. And if you're writing that medical report like you're in the third grade, and that thing goes to court, an
Hmm.
attorney is going to rip you apart and make you look like an idiot.
Yep.
So you need to know how to write. So that was one of those areas that was able to assess and target from that standpoint. From we went out and we would drill or responded to an emergency. If you seen something that someone was struggling with, those were easy. Targeting some of the other areas, the character areas, or the areas for development as a leader, that when you're first taking over into a position like a battalion chief, you may already see some of these areas, but now when I became a battalion chief, I was much more exposed to those things. And so that even took a little bit of time to assess where my lieutenants and captains were at in their leadership development. I talked to them, But then you got to step back and you got to observe and watch what's taking place there in the fire station. So
Yeah.
that's just a few of the tips.
Mhm.
And I mentioned this last time or at last episode. Get a mentor.
Yeah.
Get a competent mentor. Somebody that has been down the road, and they can mentor you in these areas.
Yeah, absolutely. So, can you talk about what it looks like to prioritize and juggling leadership responsibilities?
Yeah, yeah. And it that old thing of time management, right?
Yeah. Do you think it's a reality?
Nope, I don't. I
Hmm.
don't. And you hear an awful lot
Hmm.
about time management. And the reality is, Emily, you, me, anybody listening or watching to this, you can't manage time.
Yeah.
And nobody walking the face of the earth right now that can manage time. It's a myth. It's an absolute myth. And there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people out there making money off of that myth. We can manage our priorities.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we manage. We
Yeah.
all get 24 hours a day. Every last person gets 24. Adam and Eve had 24 hours a day. Noah and his family bobbing around in the ark 24
Yeah.
hours a day. We could fast forward it. Even the greatest general that Patton was only 24 hours. Abraham Lincoln,
Yeah.
24 hours a day. That's something that's the great equalizer right there. Is that we get and you can't manage that,
Yeah.
but we can manage the priorities within the day. And what I use is a Franklin planner. And I write down what I need to accomplish on a daily basis. And then it becomes an A, B, or C. Like yesterday, I had 6 things on my list. They were all A's. Okay, so what do I do with them? A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in that priority. Earlier this week, I had a couple of A priorities, B, and then one C. So the B priorities, it's like, okay, it would be nice to get it done today, but it's if I don't, I can get it done tomorrow. The C priorities, those are things that, yeah, I need to do them, but I have a lot of time to accomplish it. And I can even take care of moving that based off of my schedule to next week. So that establishes the priority. Now, there's other systems that are out there, but that's the one that works best for me and how I can manage, my priorities.
Yeah.
And so it's important to manage those priorities when we're developing other people. Because if you have a lot of people reporting to you, you got to manage your time. You got to, or dude, yeah, I just did it. Said manage your time. Oh
Uh-oh.
boy, hey, slap my hand, Emily. You got to manage your priorities and what do you need to get done? Because there's some of those things. Hey, as a battalion chief, you know what the number one priority was? 911 calls.
Yeah.
That trumped everything else,
Even eating.
even eating. Yes, plenty of times
Mm.
eating. That was it. But my project work, that's where I had to get in there and I had to manage my project work. When is this project due? It might be something that was assigned to me from higher headquarters. When did they need that? Or like when I was in charge of the wildland firefighting program, there were things that I set my own deadlines on, but there were other things if we were doing a regional training that when we met, it's like, okay, we're going to meet again on, January the 5th, and we need to have this accomplished. So now it's like, okay, I've got to have my particular task accomplished by January the 5th, and I now have to work that in with my other project work and visiting the stations, developing the officers and emergency calls. So it becomes a real juggling thing. And some people can pick up on how to do it really quickly because they're organized type, they're very detail conscious. You and I are both detail conscious. Folks, I'm certified as a DISC consultant with the John Maxwell team. And if you're not familiar with DISC, D is dominant, I is influencing, S is steady, and C is compliant. Emily and I are both CS, which is identified as perfectionist. So it was a whole lot easier for me to sit down, take a look at what I need to accomplish, and allocate that to a particular day. And then not only that, but then allocate prioritization to that. But other people struggle. I said this 100 times if you've been listening to this podcast. Get help.
Yeah.
Hey, don't be the person that struggles along.
Does it all.
Yeah, and you're failing.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets to the point that somebody recognizes that and is like, we got to have a talk. You know, ask for help.
And
You know,
delegate
yeah, and
tasks if you
delegate.
can.
Yeah. If you're in that position, delegate. Delegate the tasks that you can. Not abdicate, delegate. Because that also becomes part of a developmental process as well for someone. Yeah, look at the people who are working for you and what are they capable of performing? What can they do that they don't think that they can do, but you know that they can do, that you can challenge them with that? Because, wow, that is going to have an impact on their self-confidence and their morale when they see that you trust them to get something to do and you're going to help them, not micromanaging them, not becoming the helicopter parent, but that you're helping them. You're stepping in. Last episode, I talked about my graphic arts teacher, Mr. Blake. I'm not going to repeat that, but you could go back and you can listen to how he taught me how to run printing presses. You know, these are things that we can do, but we've got to be able to juggle these responsibilities and know how to delegate out and know how to identify. Fortunately, when we worked shift work, 48-hour shift, I was not attempting to develop all officers on one shift. I was able to spread it out. And you have to spread these things out.
Yeah.
Because of the other responsibilities that come up, in your career. That comes back to that triage mindset. Triage it. Triage the priorities. Triage the people that are working for you and what their developmental needs are. There's some, hey, you might be able to use a resource like developing a leader within you 2.0 and take that out to everybody that's working for you and say, we're going to go through this book here. You're going to have some people say, I hate the rain. And we'll get it in audio. You listen to it. Yeah, I especially hear that one from men. I hate the rain.
Yeah.
And then I see guys reading. I know of an individual says I hate to read, but then there's a particular science fiction program that's out there, and then it's like, huh, I see a lot of reading taking place in that. I hate to read. Then I see guys that are immersed in the sports world, things like that. So yeah, that's an excuse, guys. You can listen.
Yeah.
You can listen to these things. But coming back to that, use the resources there to help develop your people, across the board. Then discuss these things, but also target the ones that you see, there's more potential in them. You're not shucking aside the ones that are at the other end of the scale, but you're prioritizing your time, you're prioritizing your efforts. You know what? And that might even be, let's go out for a cup of coffee and sit down. Let's talk about your career development. That's going to be a sacrifice on your part and on their part, but that may just be the best time to do that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So, can we talk about how you can develop the skill of triage?
Practice. I've mentioned using a mentor in the past. Find someone who knows how to do that. Somebody who's been down. It may not, if you're having a difficult area in prioritizing and triaging, don't go to somebody else who's having a trouble with it. And don't just sit around and bellyache about it. Identify somebody. You know, if they're not in your, I would hope that you've got somebody in your organization who knows how to prioritize. Go to them and say, I need help. I need help in this area on how to set priorities, how to do to do this triage. And you might even who's outside of your organization that so many times, Emily, we become so tunnel vision, so focused,
Yeah.
and we'll only look inside our organization, and we completely dismiss people that we know, people that we go to church with, friends that we go to their house. Now, and it could just because, well, I can't ask them if they know how to prioritize because they're not in my organization.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have to ask, and we have to seek out that real world experience. Another area too in prioritizing, and this is something that was suggested from a larger mentorship standpoint with the John Maxwell team. It's called 15-minute time chart. And
Mm.
you can find these things on the internet. I even got one that I developed myself. And you track every 15 minutes what you were doing.
Mm.
And then you
Yeah.
go back, I'd say do it for a minimum of 7 days. You want to include a Saturday and a Sunday in that. And I would recommend even doing it for 14 days. And then go back and look at that 15-minute time tracker and see where your time is going to. And be honest with yourself. If it's lunchtime and you're taking 45 minutes for lunch, write that down. If it's at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and you just spent a half hour scrolling through your phone, write that down, because you need to be honest with yourself to find out where you're leaking time.
Yeah.
Because people who say, I just don't have the time to do this. Well, what are you looking at on the internet?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, what are you looking at on your phone? How much time are you spending jaw jacking with other employees?
Mhm.
I'm not talking about the time spent developing people. I'm just saying, and there's nothing wrong with having conversations with people. I mean, we did it all the time in the fire department. I love that environment, but we couldn't show up at shift change and stand around and jaw jack until lunchtime. That there were other things that needed to be accomplished. So you could track those things, and then that can help you set clear priorities based off your immediate needs and some of your long-term goals. And goal setting really would be something that we could talk about, later on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, can you share some tips for becoming more intentional with time? I think you already touched on some, but
Yeah, but we could recap here
you have
because we're getting
some.
pretty close to wrapping up this episode. That 15-minute time tracker, find something that works for you
Yeah.
from a scheduling. Maybe it's your phone. Maybe it's the calendar on your phone.
I have a friend who sets like alarm clocks for herself to
Uh,
remind her of when to do certain things or to get off of like social media or
that's a good
to
thing.
put the phone away.
Show this right here
Yeah.
for those who are watching on the video. It's a hexagonal clock, and you can see the numbers on it. For those of you who are listening, the top is 0, and it shows the time of day, but then it has 5, 15, 30, 45, and 60. So let's say I want to only work on something for 30 minutes. You heard the beep. It's set for 30 minutes, and now it's ticking down. So when this thing goes off, it's like, okay, I'm done with that particular task. Or you set it for 45 minutes or 60 minutes, it's time to take a break. Now, I will readily admit that that's still something hard for me to do because I could get involved in something,
Me too.
and next thing I know, 2 hours, especially if I'm developing content for a class,
Yeah.
because I really enjoy doing that. But find a system that works for you.
Yeah.
You. There's thousands of them that are out there. Just go to Amazon and put in a plan, just search planner you're going to spend the rest of the afternoon.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Going through things, but it's got to be a system, that works for you. I mentioned the Franklin planner. I really enjoy that one. I've been using that one since, sometime I take a stab at it, probably about 1995, and it works perfectly for me. It may not work for you. We talked about another tip is delegate when possible. And here's a hard one. Learn to say no.
Mm-hmm.
Learn to
Yeah.
say no. No, I cannot take this on. Now, admittedly, if you're down lower in the organizational chart and the boss keeps coming to you, you may keep saying yes, 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 yes. But at some point, you're going to be overwhelmed and you're going to be frustrated. And then you're going to get angry and you're going to hate your job. You're going to hate the guy or the gal who's giving all these things to you. You need to have the backbone and the courage to say, I have too much already. I cannot take anything else on.
Yeah.
Period. Period. Otherwise, it's just going to continue to go south. So we must learn how to say no. And on that prioritization system, it is so easy to look at our day and say, there's two things that I really don't like doing, so I'm just going to put them off.
Mm-hmm.
And that's called procrastination.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like marketing. Matter of fact, I hate marketing. I don't like marketing my business. There's other things that are in the business that I enjoy doing, the
Mm-hmm.
mentoring, the coaching, the teaching, but I don't like marketing.
Yeah.
But if I don't do the marketing, I don't get to do any of the coaching and the
Yeah.
mentoring and the teaching. So if I just continually put that off, I'm delaying the inevitable.
Yeah.
So,
But there are tools out there now that can help you with that
yeah,
as well. And like something like ChatGTP, for instance,
yeah,
can
yeah.
help give you those like prompts and help you where if you don't really like that stuff, it can get you going and
Yeah, or like
give
those
you those
fellows that we
tools.
saw on Shark Tank last night. They were talking about using that one that Google has. I think it's called Gemini.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
which I've not explored that one. But
Yeah.
at any rate, Emily, those are the tips that I have.
Yeah. So as we conclude, the key takeaways we want you to hear from this episode is time is a limited resource. So
Mm-hmm.
triage it wisely, use it wisely, as we all have only 24 hours in a day. And you have to sleep during part of that day too. I mean,
That's good.
it would be helpful for
Yeah.
your health. And we just want to emphasize again the need for leaders to prioritize critical tasks and develop a mindset of intentional time management.
Yeah.
So we'd like to leave you again with the challenge is identify one area in your leadership where you can begin practicing triage today or this week. And we want to leave you with a lasting, encouraging thought that mastering triage is a continual learning process, but it leads to more effective leadership and a healthier balance in life.
Yes, it does. Thank you, Emily. Well, folks, that's it for episode number 36. Develop others, but triage first. If you found this episode to be useful, please like, subscribe, and share. Visit my website at fireofficerleadershipacademy.com. Learn more about how I can help you through mentoring and coaching. Link is in the show notes. And you'll also see on my website a link to my blog, or a tab rather, to my blog in the upper left-hand corner. That gets posted on Monday mornings at 0500 Mountain Time. When I put it out on my LinkedIn profile, it gets released at 0500 on Wednesday mornings. And so again, you don't have to be a firefighter to listen to this. And hey, I got a book, The Furnace of Leadership Development, available on Amazon, and print, ebook, and audio book as well. So,
Yeah.
Emily, do you have anything else to add as we close this out today?
No, I think it's a wrap.
Okie dokie. All right, folks. Well, thank you for listening, tuning in, or watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.